Hello, cooking enthusiasts. This week's video is going to be sort of a follow-up or part two to last week's video. In that video, I made essentially a lightly stabilized paste from primarily pecorino to make easy and convenient cacio e pepe. So if you haven't watched that already, please go check it out. And at the end of that video, I made a sort of casual version of the dish with some regular little pasta shells. For this video, we are still using that stabilized cheese paste, but I wanted to show off a sort of slightly optimized workflow and shoot for more of a nice restaurant style preparation of cacio e pepe. Now, in the process, we also make a big mistake, but I thought I would show that and show powering through, which demonstrates the utility of the stabilized paste from the last video. So the first important step for a nicer cacio e pepe is toasting some black peppercorns fresh. Unfortunately, because of the colors, you can't really see much, but the carbon steel wok is nice for this because the actual flat bottom is not a super big surface area for things to fly around everywhere. Next, we are obviously boiling the pasta. I am using capellini, which is kind of between angel hair and regular spaghetti. It's just sort of what I have usually, and it's a nice shape for me to eat personally. Of course, a regular dried spaghetti or even a spaghettoni would be really nice and have certain advantages. But again, using my stabilized paste offers more flexibility. So again, this is optimized because we only have one cooking vessel with the wok, although there is a large metal mixing bowl on standby to collect pasta water. And we are using what I would say is a moderate amount of pasta water. I agree with a lot of other food people that you don't always need the massive quantities of traditional recipes, but I think some people take concentrating the pasta water a little too far. So at this stage, we add half of the measured cheese paste, and of course, all of our ratios are based on my recipe linked in the description. Unfortunately, the big mistake was we left too much pasta water in the wok. Then we add an initial dose of the previously toasted pepper. Obviously, this is not ideal execution. You should probably dump out basically all of the pasta water, but for the purposes of this video, it is actually a good demonstration for the stability of the cheese paste. So at this stage, correcting our mistake involves a lot of reduction and evaporation, which the carbon steel wok is also a good shape for. It's a very reactive vessel to the temperature of the stove and has a nice surface area for evaporation. Next, we are doing a somewhat gratuitous pasta flipping, but you can see that the sauce is starting to come together after a few minutes, and we are adding a bit more of the measured pepper and keeping some for garnish. Obviously, I wish this execution had gone better, but I guess in theory, part of the lineage of this idea is the botched by Babish video, so this makes sense. We are further optimizing the process by using my fancy oven for warm plates. You could achieve something similar with plain boiled water. In this clip, we are setting aside a portion for my caregiver that is arriving in a few hours, and this also lets us demonstrate reheating a Cacio e Pepe, which is pretty cool. At the end of the day, the pasta was almost overcooked because of the mistake we made, but it wasn't terrible, and a regular spaghetti or spaghettoni would be even more resilient to this kind of mistake. Although obviously, I hope you don't do that if you try this. And it might even look a little watery still on camera, but what we ended up with was really a nice actual cheese sauce. And remember, things tighten up quite a bit as soon as they start cooling down on the plate. All that was left to do was garnish with a little bit of pecorino, and we're spoiled with the cheese wheel, so we are using the slightly harder stuff near the rind. And another dose of that really nice toasted black pepper, which really does mellow out the dish and make it well balanced. And despite all of the trials and tribulations, the sauce texture was perfect, and ultimately I was very happy with the dish. Finally, we jump ahead to footage from over 2 hours later, and we are reviving that reserved portion of pasta for one of my caregivers. You can see just sort of bringing it back to life with gentle heat and a little bit of that starchy pasta water that we happened to reserve. And I think this would be essentially unheard of with a traditional cacio e pepe. Obviously, because of the issue we had, and because it's not quite as nice and fresh, we're also adding a little bit of fresh pecorino right in, but that addition also emulsified in pretty nice and easily. Then it was just time to plate this portion. I also tasted it, and honestly, it was as good, if not even slightly better, than the fresh portions we had for dinner. Obviously, the pasta texture was a little bit non-ideal because of our previous mistake, but again, it wasn't like terrible, and again, would have been even more resilient to reheating with a slightly different spaghetti style pasta shape. So, to reiterate, I'm super happy with the product from the last video, which is the stabilized pecorino paste. And I'm also happy with this sort of ideally optimized workflow using the carbon steel wok for Cacio Pepe. So I hope you try making the cheese paste at least, and even this sort of slightly advanced technique for using it. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching.